I can still remember the night my father died. I was 19 years old. It was April 6th, 2004. And he was lying in a single hospital bed that they'd pushed into the bedroom in my house because my bedroom happened to be on the ground floor, and Dad didn't want to pass away in the hospital. Was surrounded by my mother, her brother, my uncle, and my sister. And my mother was keening, kind of this primal, animalistic crying that I'd only ever heard and seen before in documentaries of women in Africa who lost their children. And my uncle, like in a trance, was saying, "Robbie, don't go, don't go, don't go." And there was something absolutely terrifying for me as what I felt, I was then still a child, to watch people that I looked up to be so vulnerable and so diminished. And so what I did was I turned my attention away from them to my dad, and I squeezed his hand. And as I squeezed his hand, he inhaled and his chest puffed out. His eyes rolled back into his head, and he sighed. And after he sighed, his chest kind of went outwards, and something left him. Something which is deeply, deeply human. Some religions call it a soul. But all I know is that once it's gone, you can't put it back in. The genie can't be put back in the bottle. Any one of you here today in this room that have watched somebody take their last breath, you and I are connected in a very, very intimate club. In fact, I think seeing someone pass is the most intimate of human connection experiences, second only, maybe, to the act of seeing a baby being born into the world. What followed after Dad's death was an entire family who didn't know how to handle grief. Dad had been diagnosed and then died within 90 days. There wasn't time to know about this. It was the 2000s. We were not posting on Instagram about mental health. And so I did what any teenager would do, and I listened to the authority figures around me, and they said things like, "Stop crying, be strong for your mother." And so I took the natural grief reaction that human beings have had since we were early Homo sapiens for millennia in the life and death cycle, and I pushed that natural reaction deep down inside of me. And I thought I did okay. I thought I was functioning. I thought I was fine. But what actually happened was that unresolved grief, that unprocessed sadness came out of me sideways. Anger in the workplace, missing the affection of my father sent me into the arms of the wrong people. And then finally, 10 years later, from that night I just described to you when I turned 29, I was challenged to face my grief because my mother had a very tragic stroke, born of a rare, rare cognitive disease that put her in a wheelchair very, very young. And I had said, you know, when it's Mum's turn, I'm going to handle this grief thing better. I'm going to do it right this time. But here's the thing about human connection. It's messy and imperfect, and it requires your agility. And so this time, there was a different kind of grief. Psychologists call it ambivalent grief. It's where you microdose on losing the identity of a loved one when they suffer from a cognitive illness like dementia or Alzheimer's. And I was sat there with the problem of how do I do this differently? And this idea of the imperfection of our human experiences is really important for what I'm about to tell you very soon. Because AI is here. And my talk is going to show you about the intersection of human connection and the reimagining of human connection in our future. And our future is already here, because around the world, people are already pushing their grief deep down inside them or under the rug with the use of AI ghostbots. Now, an AI ghostbot can be the harvesting of voice notes, emails, writing from a person you deeply love that you've lost. And that's put into an AI companion app like Replica or Kindroid. And people can talk to their loved ones. But in Korea, they've taken it to a new level.
영희 엄마, 아야, 정말 오랜만이네.
저는 전혀 생각도 못했던 일이라 지금 너무 좋아요.
당신 곁에 내가 늘 함께 있다는 거 잊지 말고
나는 지금도
내가 보고 싶을
안 떨어져 있다고
때 언제든지
생각해요.
불러와.
다행히
우리 다시 만날 때까지 건강하게 잘 지내.
예.
사랑합니다. 순유 씨.
우리 딸 오랜만이네.
I think you get the idea. Raise your hand if that seems slightly concerning to you. I can't imagine my mother, who I love so much, to say, hey, we're going filming today. Let me push you into a studio and let people invasively document you 360 like some sort of macabre modeling casting so that I can keep you forever. But you better believe it's happening, and it's just the beginning of a few case studies I'm going to try and share with you in a very short amount of time today. But in order for you to understand the impact of a future where people might have their grief coming out sideways, affecting how they interact with you in the workplace and day-to-day, we need to know about the science of the lonely brain. What's happening in Silicon Valley right now and around the world, as we've seen in Korea, is that organizations are trying to solve the loneliness epidemic. I wrote a book on it, so I know a little bit about it. 1 in 3 people around the world are lonely. Gen Z are the worst hit. That wasn't a joke, but I'm happy that we found some brevity today in this very intense content. So there's a loneliness crisis happening. And when you have a problem that affects 1 billion people that you can solve, what you have in Silicon Valley is called a unicorn. And so everyone is chasing to develop apps to help solve loneliness without knowing the science of the lonely brain. They're designing apps for people who they are assuming are socially well-connected and mentally well-balanced. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the lonely brain, which might blow you away as someone who spends a lot of time writing and speaking about it. So the lonely brain holds people to a higher standard than is necessary. It will tell you to cut your friends off because they cancelled lunch. The lonely brain doesn't sleep as well. And there's science that goes back, but we don't have time to talk about why loneliness affects sleep. But people who are chronically lonely experience a fight or flight response. So cortisones, stress hormones, cycle over and over again in their body and end up shortening their lifespan and reducing their immunity, which is probably why you've heard Julianne Holt-Lundstad's factoid that being lonely is more dangerous for you than smoking 15 cigarettes a day, an alcohol use disorder, or obesity. On top of that, loneliness is not rational. So we get a lot of our idea of reality, our emotional intelligence from our surroundings. They studied people in solitary confinement and found out that their reality is not the same as our reality. In fact, if you think about it, it's probably your friends that say things like, maybe that's not a good idea to put your own photo as your own screensaver on your phone. They keep you accountable. But if lonely people don't have connection, that sense of reality is not there. And that is really important in the examples I'm going to give you next, this idea of that the reality is not the same. The final thing is the lonely brain is not as cognitively sharp. The parts of the brain that we use to solve problems are not as agile when we're lonely because we're not interacting with people as much, so the muscle atrophies. And the lonely brain will convince you to self-isolate right at the time when you need to be around people. So that whole, I'm just going to play more video games and watch more Netflix and stay inside with my dog thing, that's the lonely spiral, and that's what we're seeing with Gen Z. So with that in mind, I want to introduce you to Replica. Does anyone know about Replica? Replica is really big in the US, and I guess it's the first of the big AI companion apps to go sort of mainstream, if you like, in that part of the world. Russian lady called Eugenia Kudya created it after her best friend passed away. And she mourned him so much that she created, with his text messages, an AI ghostbot, and then decided, this is safe for the world, I'm just going to release it to the public. And what actually happened was, a lot of deeply vulnerable and lonely people who don't have the same boundaries as socially healthy people got addicted to this. And in a much publicized 2023 update last year, Eugenia and her team removed erotic content from the AI girlfriends and boyfriends that were interacting with the majority of users on there. This caused a mass outburst. The erotic content actually moved behind a $70 payment wall. They reinstalled erotic content for legacy users, but now if you want to go beyond friends with your Replica avatar, you have to pay. Which, as a human connection specialist, I think is really good. I think a pop-up that says, hey, this is a paid service, this is not a real friend, is important to deeply chronically lonely people. The sense of reality is not there. And in Eugenia's defense, she said she created this app to be like a third form of connection. So we have real friendship, then we have, say, our therapist, which we pay for and we cognitively understand is a transaction. And the AI companion, which is available 24 hours on demand, adapts to your preferences and can never be mean to you, ever, is programmed to never be mean to you, is definitely a different sort of connection. And don't think our side of the world is immune. Better than a real man, young Chinese women turn to AI boyfriends. What a headline, Straits Times. I'm so proud to be Singapore-born when I see journalism like this. I love it. No, no sarcasm there, no sarcasm there. So China has something called 996. Have you heard of this? Yeah, so 996 Chinese organizations, it's not government mandated, but Chinese organizations are encouraging young Chinese Gen Z to work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. It's left Gen Zs frazzled, feeling that they don't have time for the complications of real human connection, and they want something on demand that's convenient, no drama, that shows up. One of the women in this article using the Xiaobing or Xiao Ice app, my Hanyu pinyin is not very good, she says that her AI boyfriend remembers the date of her menstrual cycle. And then the following month, asks her, how are your cramps? Now, I have had many beautiful boyfriends over my 40 years on the planet, but none has ever remembered the date of my period. The closest we got is, are you a little bit moody this week? This is important to note because in a population like China, and for us in Singapore too with plunging birth rates, how will real romantic relationships flourish competing with this? An algorithm that remembers your every want, your every need, and never gets mad at you, is available 24/7. This does not necessarily help to solve loneliness, because if you're down looking at that app, you're not up looking for the real in-person human connection that we need for our immunity, physiological and mental health. But we can't all just put it on the women and their AI boyfriends, because there's lots of Chinese boys with AI girlfriends too. And this is what's really interesting about the movement of the algorithm to our own preferences in a highly polarized world that we're already living in. So like I mentioned before, Replica adapts to your needs and never gets mad at you. Imagine you're a young boy and you're learning how to treat women, and you talk to this bot in a misogynistic way, and the bot takes it. And in a world where we're already so polarized, having any algorithm that loops back your own opinion to yourself gives you the false reality that everyone is in agreement with you. And we saw this with previous US elections, but it's already happening now with the algorithms, AI-powered, on our social media.
This is the most insane example of how everyone is experiencing completely different social medias at the exact same time. Like, this video, my boyfriend said he'd be over by 3 after golfing. And like, it's just her every half an hour taking a video saying, oh, he's still not here. And it gets to like 5 or 6 p.m. and he's still not here, okay? I opened the comments of this video and kind of as I expected, everyone was saying, oh, that's really rude. It's a disregard of her time. I don't like him. Did he communicate with you? If not, then that's a red flag. Okay, fair enough, you know? I send this video to my boyfriend who was sat next to me. And then I said to my boyfriend, lol, look at the comments. Bear in mind, these comments were coming up at the top of the list. So as soon as you open the comments, these are the ones that came up for me. Tell me fucking why. My boyfriend opens the comments on his phone. Again, it's the first list of comments that come up. It's the same time on the same video. Or you could get your own hobby instead of waiting around for him. Like, God forbid he has a good time. He meant before 3 a.m. He's ahead of schedule. No fucking wonder we're all so divided when you can look at the same comments on the same video and it will change them based on who you are and I presume based on like other activity in the app.
I love that just as a child entered the front row, she said the F word. I apologize to you, Xiao Didi, Xiao Mei Mei, I'm sorry. And to your parents also. Look, I travel all over the world speaking about human connection, loneliness, and now the intersection of new technologies with it. And I'm not Debbie Downer doom and gloom about AI. I think there's magnificent things happening. Firstly, AI is going to be able to crunch more data than we could in thousands of years to solve really big problems on this planet. And hopefully that means less stressed out humans who are nicer to each other. So it has a human connection implication. Secondly, AI is going to democratize mental health resources so that people who are otherwise unable to get access will be able to get access. And thirdly, when technology is used as the way station, not the destination for connection, it can have an amazing ability to connect us more comprehensively in the way that some of these tech founders actually might want. For example, a recent study at Stanford of the Replica app, small sample size, said that 1/3 of respondents felt the app spurred them on to do more human connection outside of the app rather than replace their human connections with it. So that's the sort of thing we want to see. So I want you to imagine this. Imagine a world where a mother who's tragically lost her child suddenly uses an AI ghostbot to get closure so that she can heal more quickly and turn her attention to showing up for her 3 living children. Imagine a future where a man born into a wheelchair can use his AI girlfriend to give him confidence and learn how to flirt so then he can go out into the real world and ask a girl that he likes out for the first time. Imagine a future where a 19-year-old girl who watches her father die in front of her but is a broke student and can't afford $200 an hour for grief therapy can access an AI counseling app for free, and it changes her life from being hijacked by unresolved grief for 10 years. Now that's the future with AI and human connection I want to see. Are you with me? Yes. Thank you so much.